Here we go, recording in progress. So, okay, very excited about today's Zoom talk. It is Tuesday, December 7th. So the gallery, everything is hung. I'm sitting in the gallery and we are going to hear from this artist right behind me. And we're also going to hear from two other artists who are in the show as well. So if you are in the area, if you're in Colorado, you're available, come on by this week and you can preview the show. We are open from 9 to 4 today, tomorrow, and Thursday. Friday, everything comes down and it's going to be locked in the gallery. Then we shut down for the holidays, and then we are back up and everything is up again on the walls January 3rd. And the 4th is our gala opening. So yay, team. This show is absolutely stunning. It's gorgeous. And I cannot wait for you all to see it. So and I think all three of my artists today are coming in town for our preview and opening and 3rd and 4th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. Okay, so we have Luke Anderson. Hi, Luke.
Hello, everyone.
So Luke is, I first saw Luke's work. I was asked to be a juror for a show in Cheyenne, the Cheyenne Spirit Show that's in March. And I remember Luke's work came through in the pool of artists and submittals. And I was like, wow, what the hell is this guy doing? And I love the work. And so I really was like, we have to have this in the show. And the other two jurors and we ended up having a long conversation about it and loved standing in front of your work. And I immediately called and asked if you could check out the Coors show and be part of it. So anyway, people always ask me how I find artists, and it's really unusual ways, but sometimes it's from during a show. So Luke was in Wyoming at the time and has since moved to Utah. So we'll be checking in with Luke here in a few minutes. Ken Spencer his work is right behind me, and Ken is in Idaho, just doing some really wonderful work. And I cannot wait to have you talk about the inspiration for this work in particular, because you and I had a number of conversations about that. And I think it's really kind of fun, the turn that your work has taken, especially when you're thinking about the Coors show. And first up is David Carmack Lewis. David is new to the show as well. Your work is really things that are going to get people talking, taking a step back, asking a lot of questions. So what I want to do, so what I want to do is the screen share. Okay. And I'm going to show your work, and I'm going to just pull it up on the screen here, and let's go through and talk about them, because it is different. You are representing the land and the landscape, but you're having these bigger conversations about the land and resources and the environment. Yes?
Yeah, on occasion, addressing environmental issues, I kind of tend to kind of move back and forth into sort of a kind of a documentary mode and a storytelling mode, if you will. But like this one certainly is more of a kind of a storytelling, if you will. I mean, it's not necessarily a narrative, meant to be a narrative, but it's supposed to just, I don't know, push ideas about how we look at the land, and also, insert a bit of magic into it, because sometimes there's an experience or a feeling that you have that I personally, I know plein air landscape painters who just capture it, so beautifully. But for me, I feel like I don't have that whatever that is, it's like I need to do something else. And so I need to just blow things up a little bit, create dramatic lighting, and do a lot of invention, and insert some of these other motifs into the landscape to give it a kind of metaphorical value.
So talk about this metaphor that you've got going on here, wreath over the mountains, over Western Hills.
So the wreath is a kind of a recent one. I have a whole sort of a roster of recurring motifs, like empty chairs and floating rocks.
Yeah.
And, there's a whole series of things. The wreath is I've only done a couple of pieces with it, and it stemmed from a time when I was at an artist residency out in Eastern Oregon, and in between painting, I tried to pretend I'm Andy Goldsworthy, and I like to move objects around in nature, and so I built this huge wreath about 10 feet across, and it was temporary. They wouldn't allow me to do a permanent installation, but I just enjoyed making it, and so I started painting it.
Oh wow! So you're kind of a land art painter
in my spare time.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that. So is there more to this kind of concept of this wreath floating over? It almost felt like a halo on, or a blessing or something with the land.
Yeah, it was just so a lot of times what I do is I do a lot of just doodling, sketching in my sketchbook or whatever. And so this kind of stemmed from that. The landscape itself is based on some photographs I took. I did a big mural out in Boise, Idaho, and so I was driving around and taking photos out there, and then I have the dramatic lighting coming in from the foreground, and then I was just thinking, okay, what else can I do with this landscape? And I'm like, I want to put that wreath in there, and it does have a sort of like, I don't know, it gives it a certain feeling, like a triumphant kind of. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm still playing with that. It's more of an instinctual thing. Like, how does it make the scene work? Kind of.
Yeah.
What's your emotional reaction to it? And sometimes I want it to simply be mysterious. Sometimes I want it to be ominous. Or just playing around with how those different combinations work.
And so I'm going to pull up another image, but this one is 52 inches tall, 36 wide, which is a good size canvas to tackle. And but you are a muralist as well, and you've got a number of public pieces, right?
Yeah. I've done about 7 large, really big public murals at this point. Yeah. So it's got to be interesting going from just something that is just on this enormous scale. And then, even this one right here, Relic, is 48 by 36, which is still really a good sized canvas to tackle, but it's not the side of a building. Right. And then the other ones are quite small. So
yeah. Right. So talk about Relic for us.
So again, the empty chair is probably one of the most common recurring motifs in my work. And it's kind of interesting to me. I was doing it, you've been including it in scenes for years and years. And it kind of, originally for me, it worked as like an invitation for people to imagine themselves in the scene, or even as a way to kind of convey an inviting sort of solitude in the wilderness. But then of course, COVID hit, and the empty chair and a lot of my paintings sort of took on a different feeling altogether. But that's what I like about these kinds of, imagery, these motifs, and using them as metaphors, because they become kind of flexible over time. And, according to each, whoever the viewer is going to bring something different to it.
Right. Yeah. And the colors are, I don't know how well they come across in this setting, but the colors in person are just lovely. They're just really
Oh, thank you.
kind of, yeah, really, they're just deep, and they really pull you in with how, this is going to sound kind of crazy maybe, but just there's almost like a romantic sense to the how you push the colors. Yeah, that's not exactly the right word, but it's sort of like you maybe kind of create this ethereal sense, not only with the subject matter, but the color kind of adds to that in an interesting way, because it's really juicy and sort of a pure color in a number of these pieces. So
a lot of my work is also just, it's about this kind of imaginary lighting, and so a lot of the color comes out of that, of trying to really push those warm colors coming from a firelight or some other source versus the cool nighttime background colors, and so there's that push and pull between warm and cool. So I think that's where that's coming from.
And this one's called Lap. So it's a boulder sitting or a large rock sitting in a chair.
Right.
Talk about this one.
So this one is just, it's a very small painting. It's just like 12 by 16 inches. And this is combining two of those recurring images that I have in my work. There's the random rock. Sometimes it's floating, sometimes it's just sitting in some unexpected place, and then there's the empty chair. And so it was a little quick doodle in my sketchbook that when I looked back at it, it compelled me, and I was like, oh, I have to turn that into a painting. And then I just like that that both objects are just sitting in this very, very barren landscape. There's not even a hint of plant growth or anything. It's just I'm not even sure where that is supposed to be. But I like the emptiness of it.
Right. Well, and I think, I know, I'm glad you're on this talk, because, and Ken and Luke, if you have questions too for David, because I think your work, David, is really going to, a lot of people are just going to be asking, what does this mean? Or what did the artist, how did he come up with these? And so I'm pulling up wait lists. And here's this boulder, with a chair sitting on top of it, and it's weightless. So, actually the boulder's just floating in the air, right?
Right. And I had there's a partner image to this called Gravity, in which the chair is sitting on the ground underneath the boulder. So, you're just moving things around, and it's a completely different feeling. But the landscape here is based on the same residency program that I mentioned before, it's called Playa at Summer Lake, Oregon. And it's just a really beautiful place, but it's very, very empty. Anyways, actually it's a very dramatic landscape. So I've incorporated lots of that area. Just if you're looking the other direction when you're out there, there's big mountains and anyway, it's a beautiful, beautiful place, and I hope to get back there again soon.
And how long was your residency?
I've been there 3 times over the last decade. One was 4 weeks. The last one was just 2 weeks, but that was during COVID, and it was kind of interesting because they, there was no interaction. They just, they're like, okay, we're going to give you the space, but none of the. Usually they have you, meet with the public and stuff, but I was happy to just be left alone and work.
Yeah, right. It's interesting, the show, and I was just writing my curator's statement about the show, and in talking about how, a lot of people have really struggled with COVID and the separation, and the masks, and, and then the politics that got wrapped into it, and all of this kind of stuff happening, right? And, but it feels to me like, in talking with a lot of artists, that artists were somehow sheltered from it, because a number of artists said, yeah, COVID has been essentially one long residency, because all the deadlines were right. All the deadlines were taken away, and galleries were like, oh, whoa, we can't have people in. So we're, and you had this breathing room, but people were still buying art, and they just started buying online. So it was kind of this, time to really think. And what has occurred is this overwhelming sense of calm and harmony in the work in this show. It just doesn't feel, there's an interesting thing, and I can't wait for you to see it and see if it's just me, but yeah, there's a real harmony in all the work this year that's very pleasing. But anyway, let's talk about this canoe.
Yeah. So this is also another kind of a new motif, is this canoe. The first one I did was just floating on the water. It was like a Columbia River Gorge scene, and it wasn't enough for just the canoe to be empty for some reason. I'm painting it, and I'm like, no, I need to push this a little further. So I had it glowing, and I don't know why. I think I started off with a fire burning in it, and I've done another one with a canoe, with a fire coming out of it. But I liked the idea of just the mysterious glow coming out of it. And then the second one I did was this, and just, I don't know what prompted me to have it, upside down floating in the sky, but it just immediately, I was like, oh, I love this. I mean, just, you look up at the sky, it's just, reflected in the water. It's almost like sailing across the clouds and on shore, know.
Right.
It just worked. I just know when it's working,
So stay put. I'm gonna grab Luke Anderson next. But I want to toss this out to all three of you. When we get towards the end, what I would love for you to think about is, what do you hope people take away from seeing your work this year in the show? So go nowhere, my friends. Luke Anderson, you are in the hot seat.
Ready.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I had kind of a crazy fall, sort of when all of my the deadlines seemed to fall kind of in a 2-month window. So I finished all that, and I've stepped back a little bit and recharging and reflecting, and so
nice,
doing well.
Nice. Good. Yeah. So I think when we first talked, so 3 years ago now, almost 4 years, but so this is your third show with us. And of course, last year was an online show only. But I remember when I first talked to you, I don't know, did you have one gallery or no galleries, or?
I think at that time I had one that was in just my hometown, in Cheyenne, Wyoming. But it was still kind of, the show that you had juried was kind of one of the first of the sort of bigger national juried opportunities that I had. So it was pretty early on still.
Yeah. So it's something that I always love is to see an artist who comes and starts at the Coors show, and then really your stress level is because now you have commitments, right? Like you're right now, like, hey, we need these paintings done. And so, I mean, it's the good and the bad, right? But I'm excited for you because things are really taking off for you, right?
Yeah. And the stress and the deadline things are sort of, like you said, they're sort of good and bad, because they can serve as an important motivator, I think, sometimes. I think I can find myself at times sort of like getting like petrified by my own options and decisions I have to make. And sometimes when you have that like external kick, it just forces you to commit to something. And I think that there can be some really interesting things that come out of that. So it's all about my experience and things I've learned is it's kind of all about finding a balance and being able to say no sometimes. And it's been a pretty big learning experience so far. Yeah.
But what I love is that you're staying true to your vision. And so I'm going to do a screen share right now and pull up your page with your work at the Coors Show. And really what I was so excited about when I first saw your work is your unique perspective. And I'm kind of curious, where did you develop? How did this develop?
I like to think it's sort of developed somewhat organically over time, and it's sort of like almost like a piecemeal mix and match kind of way. I think that a lot of artists, kind of especially in this new internet social media generation of artists, we're like so much more inundated like all the time with inspiration and content. And I think that we kind of just like subconsciously throw a lot of stuff together from what we've digested, from what we like, and then it sort of processes and the process of working through those things, I think, pulls out certain things that are true to you and kind of gets rid of some of the other stuff. So
yeah, it's interesting having both you and David Carmack Lewis on today, because the work contains representational things, like, yep, here's an elk, right? But it's done in such a different stylized way, or, David turning things upside down, literally, to kind of pull us in and make us think about things differently. And so, with this particular piece and the colors too, the colors that you're putting together, I wonder if you would just sort of talk about how the sort of the origin or the inspiration behind the work.
So this piece in particular, the original sort of conception for it was this sort of, the original idea in my head was a little bit more surreal, in that I had this vision of an elk superimposed against a fiery sunset or sunrise with the sun flare lined up like around its mouth, so it was sort of like a fire breathing like elk. That was sort of the like, I feel like a lot of my ideas sometimes start out a little more like far out, and then as I work through it, so this piece actually, the original canvas was 30 by 40 inches, and I kept like cutting it, like literally cutting it down, and because I kept redesigning it, reworking the composition until I had settled on this. And so the end result isn't quite as like surreal as a fire breathing elk, but that was the sort of like conceptual origin for this one in particular.
Wow. Yeah. You see that, Ken?
I want to see that. I want to see that.
Right.
So someday I'll pull it off.
Actually, I want to know where your trash cans are. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes in there.
I bet. I love that. Okay, hey, so let's talk about wildfire season. And boy, I'm afraid we're going to have a big wildfire season this next one coming up. It is so dry. We have not had snow in Denver yet. actually. It's kind of
Same
crazy.
in Salt Lake. Yeah, we have not seen it either.
Yeah. So wildfire season, you know, I love how God, some of these were some of I saw a couple of your images when you pulled like a horse and rider, and then you put almost these, like, it makes me think of Willy Wonka. It's almost like candy corn shapes around it, right? I think my internet connection is just a little slow. Here we go. But the way you're pushing these things is so delightful to me. So let's talk about this one here, horse and rider.
Yeah. So one thing I've been thinking about, I've been trying to think about kind of more consciously over the last year or so, is this idea of like, how can I portray the experience of living in the West? And this, I painted this during this past summer when in Utah itself didn't experience a particularly bad fire season in terms of what was actually like burning in the state. But the unique geography of the Salt Lake Valley is really good at trapping smoke from elsewhere. So we had the worst wildfire season I have ever experienced in my life, because we were getting a lot of smoke from California and Oregon that was then just hanging around. But so it was kind of unbearable to be outside. But it does really the smoke does really interesting things, like aesthetically, to the landscape. The haze, I was fascinated by how the smoke haze really accentuated the atmospheric layers of landscape in the mountains. So it's kind of, I think this painting was kind of like working through some of those like emotions of living through that, but then also finding, you know, the silver lining, the sort of like beauty in all the sort of darkness and destruction. And so that's sort of conceptually where that one came from. And then I've also like from the sort of design standpoint, I've really been kind of my whole career just sort of obsessed with the relationship between 2 and 3 dimensions, and seeing how I can use both of those in the same work to accentuate both of their best qualities.
Oh, that's really fascinating, because I think that's a perfect way to describe your work, is combining 2 and 3 dimensional objects within, you know, really on a flat surface. That because you do that, you grab that. I mean, very well. And like this one here, the Aspen Refuge, this is just a really great example of that patterning behind it, and then this eagle that comes out at us in a different way.
Yeah. This was the first one that I completed when I was sort of starting to get thinking about what I wanted to produce for this show. And it was kind of a sort of free flowing, like stream of consciousness type piece almost, where I didn't really have a specific plan or idea for it when I started. Sometimes like one way I get over creative blocks is just to start with a subject, like the subject that I know I wanted to use, but maybe I don't know what I want to do with it. But once I get that actually out and painted, it can sort of help reveal what needs to be around it. And you can kind of see in the texture of this one, there are things that I did that I painted over because they didn't work the first time, which I think that's really interesting when I see other paintings that you can tell something else was there that the artist wasn't satisfied with. So I think it gives extra sort of life to it.
Right. So how do you pick? So if this one, I mean, I'm guessing that the eagle was a subject you wanted. Is that the impetus for this piece?
Yeah, that's where I knew I wanted to do something with an eagle that I had never painted one before. So I was, that's sort of what one of the themes, like the three wildlife pieces in this show were all sort of new subjects that I hadn't ever really done before. And I was just creatively, I wanted to get into something new and fresh and see if that would sort of kickstart a new direction in the work. So
yeah. No, and then just adding the patterns with this one is just so fascinating to me. How did you, like, why was the eagle something that, or the moose or the elk? Why was that something that, just because it's of the West, or you see them, or?
Yeah, just generally, it's, they're all animals that in the many travels and road trips and forays into the mountains throughout my life, it's just they're all things that I've seen, and they're part of my experience with the West. And I think it's a somewhat universal feeling, the sort of excitement of when you go for a hike. And I even still get excited when I see deer, like
oh, I know, right? Yeah,
which is not a super rare sighting kind of anywhere you are, but there's something about wildlife and like the sort of megafauna that creates a sort of more ancient like human connection to the landscape, I guess, for me.
Oh yeah, I like that way of thinking about it. Yeah.
They're the sort of remnants of the sort of like pre-civilization, pre-ice age North America.
Yeah.
Descendants of those animals. It's part of my connection with the landscape. So.
Right, exactly. And doesn't it almost feel like you just sort of like some magic just happened, or you kind of got singled out for something really special when you see something like that,
Yeah, you're sharing it with this animal. In whatever way you interpret, but you're not alone in that moment.
So vernal snowfields too, and so a moose, and this is another just new adventure for you too, right? I don't know that I've ever seen you do a moose in a setting.
Yeah, and I wonder if people are gonna look at this. So I do I think titles are really important to my work, and I wonder if people are gonna see the title and think vernal, and think about the town in northeastern Utah, which I don't think there are. I don't think there are moose in vernal. The title is just referencing the vernal, like the general spring, like the season of spring, vernal equinox and all that. And again, this is kind of inspired by the Western experience, in that like oftentimes our biggest and most intense snowstorms tend to come on very suddenly in the springtime. But the inspiration for this one came from one of Monet's later works, where he had some pieces that he did on the Seine that were like very foggy and very low contrast. And so I was sort of fascinated by those, and was really thinking about how to, like, from a distance, create a sort of like uniform color or value, and then as you approach it, new things are revealed. You see there's 3 or 4 or 5 different colors that make up color of the sky and the snow. So just like trying to have an engaging work from every angle, every distance,
Yeah.
to just invite the viewer to always be kind of looking for something else.
Well, and it has that sense too, because when you do get into a snowstorm, or even a flurry, things really flatten out quickly. And so as an artist, that's a challenge in and of itself, to add depth to a silhouetted animal, or, right? I mean,
yeah, and I think you can see in my work, I'm just kind of obsessed with atmosphere, and space, and the relationship between those two things.
right.
And
well, and this year, go ahead.
I was just going to say, a snowstorm presents a different kind of opportunity for an environment where there's actually kind of a lack of space because things are so faded, or washed out.
Well, and you know what? Okay, so, and I'll just toss this out too. When you're in a show like the Coors show with the West as a theme, how do you take a familiar subject like an elk, like a horseback rider, like a moose, or even a landscape, and show us something different? And I'm forever telling artists this, like when they say, oh, well, how do I get into the Coors show? Because it is hard to get into the show these days. Like one of my big things is the work has to be really solid and really good. But one of my things is show me my world in a different way. Show me something I haven't seen. And that is hard. I mean, that's just really difficult for any artist to do. But look, like Other Worlds, here's a landscape that you are showing me in a completely different way. So what is the inspiration? Yeah. Me too. I'm really glad.
High praise.
So what's the inspiration for Other Worlds?
I grew up in Wyoming. I went to the Teton Science School when I was in 5th grade. It's always been a place that has captured me in a very special way. And so I've painted it several times off and on. I sort of revisit it every couple of years. But a lot of my landscape work lately has again emphasized atmosphere and space, and this sort of like backlighting, and a kind of like glowing quality in the light.
Yeah.
And so this one was kind of like spliced together from several different references, and I changed certain arrangements and colors to maximize the composition. And I get a lot of inspiration from graphic design, the sort of like minimalist graphic design elements. And so that's kind of, I liked the idea of, I've done some works where clouds take on organic form and shape, but they fill sort of like negative space defined by the rest of the landscape.
Yeah. Well, and to take, again, that's another one. Other Worlds is another painting that, here's the Tetons. Oh my gosh, we have seen so many spectacular paintings and photographs, of the Tetons. It's absolutely iconic. And you minimized the Tetons in that painting. I mean, it's so subtle the way that they're in there. It's more about the clouds and the glow of the foreground, really. It's just, look at the rest of the world around the big, beautiful postcard in front of us, right?
Yeah, it's sort of the backdrop, like the shape. I'm really interested in how to reduce information like as much as I possibly can to convey, a landscape or an idea. But it still goes back to this idea of like the experiential West for me, because that's one of the first things that I thought as a kid when I saw it was like, this can't be on the same planet that I live on in like the once plains of Eastern Wyoming. It's just It's like that much different. And so it kind of that just experience of like visiting a place like that for the first time and the impact that it has on you for decades, for the rest of your life. So
yeah. Okay, stay put, stay where you are. We're going to head over to Ken. And hello, Ken, how are you?
Good, thanks. It's good to be with you all.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. So everybody gets to see your paintings behind me as we chat, but I'm going to go ahead and call them up. So Ken is in Idaho, and if you all love to get online and read blogs, Ken has a really nice one on his website, jkenspencer.com. Is that right? Yeah. So, and what I really love about it is you do kind of tell some pretty personal stories about the work and your past and your family. You grew up in a big family, and you know, and I just your blog is one that I always enjoy because you connect your inner world with the paintings, which I think is what we're trying to do on the Zoom calls as well, is really kind of bring forth the inner workings of an artist and the stories and how this work came to be. Anyway, so I'm just going to give you a little shout out there to check out Ken's blog, because there's some good stuff on there.
Oh,
and he tells tales about his past and getting into trouble. And so those are always fun too. So, but Ken, you know, when we were talking about the show in the spring and over the summer and the work, you know, you really kind of looked very close to home, and really, and I want you to elaborate, but sought a lot of inspiration just right in your neighborhood, right in the area surrounding you, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Have the three smaller pieces that are of a state fair, which takes place, the Eastern Idaho State Fair, right in my town. It's certainly an annual event here, and one of a few truly just traditional state fairs, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, like that one.
Yep.
So those three, this little one called Scrub-a-Dub-Dub. Actually, I think that one, that particular image, Scrub-a-Dub-Dub, came from one up in Salmon, Idaho, a little bit, a couple hours north of me. Yeah. But still, consider that my neighborhood. It's in Idaho, and it was fun to try to find images that both were human in terms of the human experience, and connected with animal husbandry of livestock and things. So it was a little bit of a new territory for me, and I don't know why, because I've lived around it for a long time.
Yeah, right. But you know what I love about these paintings, and Precious Cargo I just pulled up, and okay, so this title cracks me up because when my boys got their driver's license, I have twins, and when they got their driver's license, my one son, when he was out of the probation period and he was going to drive his girlfriend home, and I stopped him at the door and I said, "Precious Cargo, you drive very safely. This Morgan is precious cargo." And he looked at me and he's like, "Her dad says that to me every time I take her somewhere." And I'm like, good. So I love that time. I love the title, Precious Cargo. It's true.
This one is a little ironic in that wheelbarrow probably had manure in it.
Of course, of course.
They took a load over to the manure dump and then gave the little one a ride back in it. It can't be very hygienic.
Right. But you know what? Isn't that like, I remember being a kid and getting wheelbarrow rides, and it was the very best. It was getting jostled around, and
Tons
yeah.
of fun.
Oh my gosh, so much fun. Getting ready for show 2 is another one of these small ones. As soon as it pops up here on the screen. And, you know, I think too, Ken, the other thing you're doing with these, with all of the paintings in the show, but with these little small ones with the glimpse into this Western life, is really showing the beauty in it, you know, and just really kind of, you're a tonalist painter, and in my mind, and so close tone range, but really bringing us the beauty in kind of an unsentimental way, you know.
No, thank you. Yeah, with this one in particular, has a very invented color. You know, that's not anywhere in the neighborhood of what would be natural color, but I like that yellow violet combination, and just experimenting with the emotion that comes behind with color.
Yeah. Oh, that's a wonderful point, because color does bring a lot of emotion with it, and whether people realize it or not. I'm going to pull up your big ones now, and they are sitting right behind me, but this one I love, Rush Hour. Rush Hour in, this could be Rush Hour on the plains in Colorado, definitely Rush Hour anywhere you've got agriculture. And you've got a big combine in front of you, but in your neighborhood. Yeah.
So to give everybody else a little bit of context, Rose pushed me to go beyond. I love being with Luke and David on this, because they are conceptual thinkers, and I've loved hearing their thoughts and process, and for this show, Rose, you really kind of encouraged me to dig deep in the conceptual range, and I'm really happy with what came out of it. I'm at heart a painter, and I love paint and texture and color and design and all that, but the concepts behind these I'm delighted with how they came out. This one being that anybody who lives in agriculture country has been caught behind farm equipment, and kind of knows, you know, if these people were in a hurry to get somewhere, but there's no room to pass.
Right. You're just here, so sit back and enjoy, and check out the vista. Okay. And I just absolutely adore this painting. Open range convergence. Again, you know, if you're in a rural area, cows just sort of wander onto the road, and
there may be some people who haven't experienced this, but there's signage out in the country that says open range, watch for stock, and basically if you hit them, you're responsible for it. It's not the cow's fault if you hit it, even if it's in the middle of the road. So this concept came just from the experience of being out there, and the interesting confluence of modern society and natural life, and that somehow we have to find a way to live together.
Yes.
I certainly am so glad I don't have to travel on wagon roads. I love to be able to get places comfortably and quickly, but we have to respect natural life too, and how we do that, that's the question. That's a big question, whether it's water issues or or wildlife, the environment itself.
Yep. And I would say that's actually, I think with this extended period of time that artists have had in their sort of residencies, yeah, I think it's given people a lot of time, artists, to reflect on what's our responsibility here in this conversation, because there's a lot of that, not in a hit you over the head with it, but a lot of conversations about what is our responsibility. So talk about this, troublemakers. I love this.
Yeah. So I saw this haystack, and it's pretty much just as I saw this. The cows weren't there, and the concept of the cows came a little bit later. I thought initially of having goats. If any of you live around goats, they get everywhere. They climb trees. They go strange places.
No boundaries.
I opted to do one with cows, and just the idea that these cows are hungry. They want to eat, and they're clueless of what might happen if they knock against the 2x6 that's holding up 12 feet or 15 feet of hay. I just thought that was a humorous maybe crossroads, just the convergence of animals and the farmer.
Yep. Oh yeah, and his great plans right here of, well, that's all right, build it higher and we'll stabilize it. Yeah. And then along come your cows.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, so I'm gonna stop the screen share here for a second. So, I early on after we talked with David, and so I'd love for Luke and David to also chime in. But I posed a question, and certainly everybody who's out there listening, if you have questions, put them in the chat box. But I posed a question: what do you hope people will take away from the work? And Ken, tell me what your thinking is on that, because this is a little bit of a different foray for you. I mean, it's definitely your work and your style and your palette, but you're having kind of some fun with it.
Yeah. Well, I really love something David said earlier in his time about flexible interpretation. I think that's good. And an artist may have a particular motivation behind something, but the artist or the viewer very much brings their own experience to viewing a piece and living with a piece. So to a certain extent, I'm a little bit reluctant to say too much to prejudice the mind of somebody that it may not be as enjoyable if they hear what I meant. But what I hope is there's a love of beauty. I still paint with the intention of making something beautiful, but also the engagement of the mind to think. Who are we as individuals, as people, and how do we take care of the world that we live in?
Yeah, Luke, David, jump in.
I think we're just looking at Ken here, but yeah, I love that. I mean, I do feel like the viewer needs to. I mean, art is something that has to be met halfway by the audience. Whether it's a song or a novel or a movie. It's like you bring yourself into it, and people listen to the same pop song but have it means totally different things for different people. But what I want to kind of convey just the sense of wonder, a little bit of mystery, and that confronts us when we're just out in the world, especially in the wild, in the landscape. And so I'm just kind of trying to heighten that feeling, of just wonder. Sometimes it's ominous, sometimes it's just just wondrous and beautiful, and sometimes it's a little scary. And so I'm just trying to convey those reactions that we have.
I like that. A sense of wonder. I like that a lot. Luke, how about you?
I guess one thing that I've been thinking about while listening to everybody talk is, I think this group, the three of us here, I think sort of there's a common thread of like a sense of place to our work, and the idea that sense of place doesn't have to be a specific place or landmark. Like the sense of place comes from an experience, or the people that you're around who form your community, or things that sort of stir up like very human like fears and anxieties. I think that there's a strong sense of like conceptual place in terms of like being engaged and aware and participating in your environment. And I think this group in particular has shown like three very different ways to think about that, which I think it's awesome. And we didn't plan that, but it's a really good. I think it's really interesting.
It's always so amazing to me on these talks and I don't say, hey, I want to put you three together at all. You just grab a day and time that works for you when we have a sign up for it. But somehow there is a strong thread connection. And Luke, I think you hit that nail on the head. Yeah, exactly. So we are right up against the 1 o'clock. Do you have any other questions or comments for each other? And then we'll call it a wrap. Unless you folks listening, if you have questions too, but gentlemen, take over.
I just wanted to say something about, I was really enjoyed seeing Ken's work and realizing how much invention there was going on. I mean, I'm used to, people just painting, in plein air, and just, it has that feeling, but I like that how he's inventing the color, or he's including elements that weren't actually there. And that was a sort of a bit of a surprise for me. And I'm like, oh, okay, and then I really like Luke's kind of graphic approach, that I used to be an illustrator, many long time ago anyway, but I like the pushing those boundaries between, sort of the commercial graphic arts and the fine arts. And, it's like, people want to draw lines between the things. And so I really like his approach. It's really cool stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think Luke's sense of design and colors just wonderful. I want to say to David, I'd love to paint you. You've got a great character. And that painting behind you of looks like a fire pit.
Oh, yeah. It's a 5 by 5 foot painting of a fire pit.
I not so much in recent years, but man, I've spent a lot of great time in the back country, and we call sitting by the campfire wilderness TV. You just sit there mesmerized by the flames and the coals and stuff. So it's been a real pleasure to be with both of you, and thanks, Rose, for hosting.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh my gosh, I am so glad to have you on. Luke, final word?
Yeah, I would just say I really enjoy in Ken's work the sort of balance between human and natural elements of landscape. I think a lot of landscape painters, like myself included, tend to sort of avoid the human elements and just portray the sort of pristine wilderness. And I've been thinking a lot about how I can incorporate human elements. So I really enjoyed that balance. And yeah, I've been a fan of David's for several years. I love Nocturnes, and I think that he just does such a good job of facilitating that sense of like the things that you see in your sort of immediate like field of vision at night, and guiding that with a single light source, and then putting little things in the background. It's just that sort of sense of unease a little bit. That's just, I think it captures being out in the, you know, in the woods, or, you know, after dark, just so well. So.
All right, gentlemen, that's a wrap.
All right.
So thank you both. Thank all of you very much, Ken, David, Luke. So appreciate your time this afternoon. Get back to the studio, start working. For those of you listening, please note that you can come see the entire show this week. Today till 4 o'clock will be open. Tomorrow, Thursday, 9 to 4. You can see everything. Just bring a mask with you and let's be safe. And then we shut her down through the holidays, and we're back up on January 3rd. And check the website for updates and all of that kind of stuff. But we'll look forward to seeing you, and happy holidays, everyone. Gentlemen, thank you again so very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Take care, y'all.
Okay.
Bye.